Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Get Hired Summit. We're so excited for this, and we're so excited about everyone that's come together to make this event a success. As people start rolling in and jumping onto YouTube, we want you to introduce yourself on YouTube and tell us a little bit more about where you're from, what you're looking to do. Maybe post your LinkedIn profile so that you can go ahead and connect with other folks in the chat. And then throughout this event, let's ask as much questions as possible. Let's engage with Quentin as he's given his keynote. I'm really excited to introduce him here in a minute. But before we get into it, I just want to say thank you so much to Kiln for allowing me to come to this amazing office space. You can see the fantastic art behind me there. One of our title sponsors at the Get Hired Summit, and they're running a really cool competition, which we'll be posting in the Slack channel and on LinkedIn. So look out for that. With that said, a big thank you to our organizing committee, the Utah Black Chamber, Utah Women in Sales, Rev Road, Mentally, and the Diversity Career Fair. It's been such a cool journey to watch these organizations come together to put on events with so many cool companies, cool speakers, amazing job opportunities at a time like this, when many companies are stepping back and saying, hey, we're just going to wait it out. These companies are diving in and saying, we're going to be a part of the solution. So we're so excited about that. I'm seeing more folks join the live stream here. So we're excited to meet with you. Go ahead and introduce yourself as you're coming in. This is going to be a sweet interactive experience. Yes, so I wanted to share my screen with you really quick and show you just something that has made me personally really proud about the Get Hired Summit. That. I want to scroll down here and show you the list of speakers that are going to be talking to you. First of all, folks like Quentin Allums that we're waiting for right now, Francis Coronel, Jennifer Toddy, James Jackson, Sid Tetro. And if you go down the list here, you can see it on the website, just some world-class speakers that are going to be talking to you that really know what they're talking about. If you look at the sponsors, we just have this incredible group of companies that are coming through and sponsoring this event. We couldn't be more excited to be partnering with these companies. These folks are putting their hands up at this time when, like I said, many companies are stepping back and not doing anything to help. These folks are coming together to help you land your next play and make sure that you're set up for success. And finally, I want to highlight something. It is by no mistake that the name of the summit is the hashtag Get Hired Summit. As we've been going through, we've been tracking all of the hashtags that are happening all over social media and then adding them to this amazing board here sponsored by Gig. And so if you can see everything that's posted with the hashtag Get Hired, we can pull onto this board and feature on the website and feature on their landing page. And so if you are having a good time at the summit, or you find a good quote, or you connect with the speaker, please go ahead and post with the hashtag Get Hired. Let us know that you're there, and we'll be able to include you in some competitions. We'll be able to highlight your post here, and we'll be able to start engaging with you that way. So let me go ahead and stop my screen share. With no further ado, wow, this is awesome. We just see tons of people coming in here on the live stream, over 100 people right now, and more coming in every minute, 126, this is crazy. So go ahead and introduce yourself. But with no further ado, I want to introduce to you Quentin Allums, a friend of mine from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and just an incredible, inspirational person. Quentin is, or Q, as many of his friends know, is a TEDx speaker. He's an esports and culture podcaster, and his videos and podcasts have been viewed and listened to over 10 million times. He has some incredible advice and just one of the most down-to-earth and real people I know. We were talking a little bit earlier about what he's going to be sharing with you today, and I'm so excited to hear from it. We'll hand over the time to him. We'll listen to him, and then we'll run a Q&A. So if you have any questions for Quentin as the session is going on, post them in the chat, and we'll be able to go from there. With that said, Quentin, the time is over to you.
Thanks, man. I just want to start off by saying, like, I miss speaking so much. I miss the stage so much. But these digital events are so weird for me. I can't see if you're laughing at me. I can't see if you're laughing with me. I can't see if you're laughing at all. But I just pulled up the YouTube thing and I see you all commenting, and it gives me energy. So I appreciate it. Keep it coming. Um, just a little bit about me. Just so you have context, I was like 22 years old when I decided that, like, yo, I'm gonna launch a company. I'm gonna change the world. And I launched this virtual reality startup in the education space. I fell on my face within 6 months, burned through all my savings, had no idea what I was doing, but really learned what kind of leader I was, what I was good at. Around the same time, I launched my first agency. And I struggled for a long time, didn't pick up any clients for months on end. Like, I was renting out my extra rooms in my apartment just so that I could pay bills, pivoted over and over and over again from like full stack to content marketing to social media management, and ended up on personal branding. But like throughout that entire time, from, hey, I'm going to launch this VR company, to agency, to even now, like, I was recording a video every single day, just talking about my story, talking about what I was going through, talking about what it was like, and nobody watched, and I went from like YouTube to Snapchat to Instagram to Ask Whale, which most people don't even know what that is, to like all these different platforms like Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And then it wasn't until I moved to LinkedIn where things really started to pop. And I posted my first video there and it hit 30,000 views. And it was just like, yo, like, I'm just this young dude that has no idea what he's doing, but I'm here and I'm going to be consistent with it. And I did that every single day, like over 500 videos before really anyone took notice across platforms. And then finally my company started picking up steam. I started making money. I started learning, like, wow, like I can actually do something with this. But I realized I wanted to do it with people, and I was alone. So I launched what my company is now, which is Urban Misadventures. And we absorbed my client base, and I met my three co-founders. One was my former college roommate. Other two, like, I had just met, and we're like, hey, like, we're going to do this thing. And we moved, like, we made 6 figures in the first 3 months, and had a lot of fun doing it, and made a lot of money, especially right before COVID happened. Like, I was on top of the world. I had speaking gigs booked all over the world. I just like wrapped up like Inbound, which was on my dream list, things to do. The company was a machine, like everything was just rolling. And then COVID happened. And the reason, like I mentioned, like, I miss speaking and I miss kind of how life used to be, I did another event like this yesterday. And I had this speech planned out, but I decided to change it all because he asked me this question. I'm like, damn, I want to talk about this. But he asked me, like, are you spiritual? And I thought it was a weird question that I answered and everything. But I'm like, afterwards, I'm like, why did you ask me that? And he mentioned, like, he was struggling and he was drifting, and he was trying not to drift. And it made me realize, like, people like me, we have this tendency to hop on calls or hop on a stage or hop on a podcast or hop on a digital event and just pretend that everything's good. We just, like, this is where I'm at. We put ourselves on a pedestal. Like, we share the top 3 stories that everybody knows. Like, oh yeah, like, I was homeless, I slept in my office floor, or like, I had negative $900 in my bank account. We share those top 3 stories and we don't really talk about anything else. And I talked to him, and to be completely transparent, like I'm totally good right now, but my company, like, we're closing the doors, and we're deciding to close the doors, after contracts are up. To give you an idea of what happened, like, initially in the year when we were having our best year, on track to to do our best year. And then we lost like over $600,000 within a few weeks. Like, so just a complete 180, a complete change. What felt like overnight, being on top of the world, to just furloughing our employees, to not paying ourselves, things like that. And we could keep it going. We could definitely keep it going. It's just, do we want to keep it going? And I told them, like, I was also in a very dark place. I was also drifting, like there's so much power in that, and so much comes from that as well. Like for me, it was like, okay, like how do I deal with this company closing down? Like I just spent 2 years of my life building this thing, like this was the thing that was going to be like, yeah, like Q, you made it, you did it. And I was watching like my co-founders, like they all had their thing. One was like his stream was growing, he's big into gaming. So am I, but he's big into gaming. Another one like just got a big position with a company to manage their brand. Another one, like his fashion brand's about to blow up. He's about to get a collab with Levi's, and he was just featured in Vogue. And it's not that I didn't have anything. It's just like I didn't have that thing that I knew I wanted to do. So it was very hard for me, and I was drifting. And I told him, like, just be okay with that, because I was sitting in the weight room, like beating myself up, frustrated, drifting, like realizing that I was burnt out from just focusing on building these companies for 4 years straight, 5 years straight, without like taking any breaks. And finally, I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like what's going on? And I just started following my curiosity, just leaning into the things that I wanted to do, like just dabbling in my creativity, like creating things that I wanted to create, doing my podcast, like talking to interesting people, writing more, doing more video games because I wanted to, and that's when opportunities started coming through the door. That's when people like Luke started reaching out. I'm now planning an accelerator with this other thing that I'm doing. More freelance clients started coming through, like even like more leads for our company, even though we're not taking them right now. Just all these opportunities started coming through. And I want to make sure that I'm paying attention to these too. Power flow, yes. But all of these opportunities started coming through, which was incredible. But I realized, like, and I knew this before, but it was powerful to see it in action again. But I realized it was because of the personal brand, and I made a promise to the 3 other founders when we first started this company, because like we had nothing when we first started. Like I basically had my company, we absorbed that client base, but it was me and then my old college roommate, Izzy, who had just, he was just transitioning from his job as director of corporate sponsorship with a sporting organization. It was him, and then he was working on bikes at the time, and I'm like, dude, come work with us. Then another guy was working a full-time job, wanting to get out of it. And then Brahma, who was one of our creatives, was working for Milwaukee public school system. Like we had nothing. And I told them, like, I promise, like, I don't know if this is going to succeed. I don't know where we're going to go. I don't know what this is going to turn into, but I can promise that we're going to be better off because of it. We're going to be so much better off because of the things that we do now. And we put a heavy emphasis on our personal brands and the things that we were doing. Like we all did public speaking. We all were big on social media. We all like were at our events. We put a heavy emphasis on those things, and all these opportunities that came through, which is what I want to talk about today, and what we'll talk about. And if you have any questions like throughout this, like write them down. Like we'll do Q&A at the end of all of this. But all of the opportunities came through because of the personal brand, because of what I've been able to do. And I know the opportunities that my team had as well was because of the personal brand. And to give you an idea, like not even on my own end, like just of my friends and clients, like one client that we worked with over 1 year, like she made 600K, which is the amount that we lost actually, made 600K annual recurring revenue on top of whatever she was doing before, just from like personal branding, just from the videos. I've got another buddy who's like 22, and he's interviewing the top minds on the planet, like just from his podcast, just because it's like, hey, like I want to tell my story, and I'm going to do it by telling other people's story. Another friend of mine was just pushed out of her company, bought out, but pushed out of her company, like on the verge of suicide. And she started talking about these things and started like sharing her journey and making videos and writing more content. And now like she's one of the biggest LinkedIn influencers in the world, you know, and she's crushing it and she's running $1 million business, but it stemmed from the personal branding. And I could list stories off like that over and over and over again. It applies to the entrepreneurship space as much as it does if you're an employee or a freelancer, or a contractor, or a musician, whatever it may be, you know, but that personal brand, like so powerful. Like, this is so hard. I can't see your face. Let me see if there are any relevant questions. Newly verified. What up, dude? Yeah, any questions you have? Any questions you have, let me know. But yeah, it was very powerful to see it in action. And there were a couple things that I realized, like, hey, like, I'm doing this. I did this, and at a time like this, like 2020, like we've got coronavirus, we've got like Black Lives Matter, like our world is like so messed up right now, like so many things going on. Like, and those are just two things, you know, that in itself, I think shows that job security is not a thing, you know, like at least not in the way that we thought it was. It's not a thing, even for people like me that have a business. But despite the fact that I wasn't paying myself through my company, I still had freelance work coming through. I still had people coming and saying like, hey, like, I'll pay you to do a speaking event, or, hey, can you consult my company on this? Like, all of these opportunities that were coming through, even though that my business was going through a very dark time, you know, like times like these show that job security does not exist. But if you have that personal brand, you're going to be so much more attractive. And if you look at the future, if you look at the future, like even now, honestly, like our world is so competitive, like so competitive. You're trying to apply for a job. Like, of course, like there's so many other people that are applying for that same job that probably have a lot of the same skills that you do. But the thing that's going to set you apart is that personal brand. You look at the future, you've got Internet of Things, like blockchain, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, like all these things that are going to change our world. And a machine is going to be able to do our jobs a lot better than we can. And the thing that's going to make us stand out is the personal brand. Like, of course, there are other things, other variables there, but the personal brand is going to be the thing that makes us more attractive. In my opinion, it's going to be less of the quality of work that you can do and the artistry behind the work that you can do. So if you're focusing on that personal brand, you're going to be more attractive now and definitely in the future. And I think if you're not, it's going to be very hard to stand out in the future. But the things that I did have, the main thing, hands down, is my network. Like, my network. If I look at myself 5 years ago, like honestly, even like 5 years ago, telling me that I was going to do a speaking gig, I mentioned that I missed like stepping on stages. Like, I was the dude back in the day that dropped out of a public speaking course because I found out that you had to do speeches. Like that was me. So just imagine that kind of person back then, you know, like if I look at me and my network and who was in my network back then, it was a bunch of college students that were drinking, you know, and nothing wrong with drinking, nothing wrong with college students, as I'm sure a lot of you are college students, like totally cool. I was a college student, but like that was my network. I didn't know anyone. I didn't really know anything yet. And if you look at my network now, like I just locked in Lewis Howes as a podcast guest, like Santia Deck, like Jordan Harbinger, like my friends are like these big time entrepreneurs and big time creatives, you know, like my network is very powerful. And because of that, and because I know what I can do, but because of that, it's like, hey, yeah, I just met this person. Q would be a good intro for you because I know what he does and I respect him. Or like, hey, like Q, you should speak at this event because I owe you a favor, you know. But my network has made everything during this time so much easier. And honestly, the way that we hire too, back in the day, like, was a lot of it came from just our networks, like people introducing us to people that would be a good fit. And of course, we interviewed them, we studied, we did a background checks and things like that. But a lot of it came from the network. So that was a big thing for me, and it still is a big thing for me. That's how I lock in a lot of my podcast guests. That's how I lock in a lot of my leads. It's from people sending things to me and people realizing like, hey, yeah, he does that thing. You should talk to him. Another thing that I realized that I had is brand equity. You know, like people knew my story. I didn't really talk about much here, but people knew my story. Like they had trust. Like, yeah, Q, like I've been following him since 2016. Like he's that dude that like lost everything and then like had everything and then lost it again. Now, like, he's trying to figure everything out. Like, I had built trust with people. I had brand equity. Another thing that I had that I realized that helped me and brought more opportunities was my community. Like, hands down, like that's probably one of the most important things, and something that most people forget, or just pretend, like they confuse, like, hey, I've got 1 million followers, so I've got a community of 1 million people. And I think they're completely different things. You know, like, a community is a place that, like, people go there to get value, but also they bring value. Like, it's an ecosystem, it's a conversation. It's not just, hey, let's talk about how great this person is. You know, my community, they send me stuff, they also ask me questions, I also ask them questions. I've been going through a dark time, I've been trying to figure out my life, I've been trying to figure out what I want to do next, and I went to them like, hey, like, what do you think of this? You know, like, here's this new show that I'm concepting, what do you think of this? And they provided feedback. Like, that community, like, is so strong, and I'm so thankful for that, because it's given me so many opportunities, and it's made me so much more attractive to people that are reaching out to for various opportunities or things like that. And then, of course, what most people know me for, which is the content. You know, the content, the newsletter that I write. You know, it's my favorite thing right now. I haven't sent it out in like a couple of weeks because I have been going through an evolution, but it's just me talking about the decisions that I make in business, me talking about the decisions that I make in content, you know, in community building, and just completely raw, unfiltered. It's got like 25,000 people that just read my thoughts, you know, the weirdest thing. But the content, like the podcast that we're working on as a company, and now the podcast that I have just for myself, you know, like, the content backs me up. The videos that I make, you know, like, if someone wants to hire me, hey, like, come talk about video, like, they can go and look and see that I have like over 500 videos, like probably way more than that. I don't keep track anymore, but over 500 videos, like, it backs me up. Now, when you start looking at like, hey, like, I want to apply for this job, like, that content piece is going to be huge. Mark Metry, who's a buddy of mine, and he's the young person that has one of the top podcasts, like, he talks about this a lot. Like, he used his podcast as a gateway, as like, let me get my foot in the door to go talk to people, you know, and he uses that, hey, like, I'm going to bring value to you. I'm going to get you on my show. I'm going to push you out to my community, to my network, but also we're going to build a relationship here. And on the back end, all these people on the outside are like, damn, like, Mark knows this person, he knows that person, he knows this person and that person. Like, wow, he's a credible source. But all he did was, I want to interview you, I want to talk to you. And that content on the back end, it gives him so much credibility. So those are some things that I would start to look at. And I know there's a panel later on that talks more about personal branding, and we can riff on this in the comments if you have any questions specifically. But I did want to keep it broad. But on content specifically, Bridget Valentine, does this mean simply on my LinkedIn profile, start a blog? On content specifically, I think a lot of people think like, hey, I've got to share my story, I've got to put myself out there, you know, so that means I need to give 10 tips on how to start a business when I don't even have a business yet, or this is my first business, or I'm going to go write a blog because I see other people writing a blog. Like, there's a specific thing that they think content is. Like, sometimes that's just like, hey, I'm a good photographer, I'm going to share my story through photos. I was a singer-songwriter for a long time. Long time meaning 7 years. I was a singer-songwriter. So a lot of my ideology around personal branding comes from my time as a songwriter, as a singer, you know, as a guitarist. And if you look at your favorite musicians, if you look at album one, you know, like, each album tells a story, but also each song tells a story. And then collectively they tell a story together, you know, and then album two, same thing, album five, same thing, album seven, same thing, and so on, you know, and then collectively those all tell a story as well. As you're creating a brand, as you're creating brand equity, whatever it is, anything that I just talked about, I would start to look at it like that. You know, what's the album that I'm creating right now? What's this album that I'm creating right now? And tell that story. And the important part is that overarching story. So as you start to build those communities, and as more people start to follow you, and as employers look at your social media profiles and the things that you're doing online and offline, they're going to look at that. like, what's the story? And if you're wanting more people to follow you, that's going to be the thing that gets people to come back, that overarching story. A good example of that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like you look at, wow, I'm blanking on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's like my favorite thing of all time. If you look at the Avengers, like you've got Hulk, you've got Captain Marvel, you've got Spider-Man, like Black Panther, all these heroes, they each have their individual stories. They each have their stories that have characters underneath those stories, but collectively, like they're the Avengers and those stories intertwine, they connect. Start thinking of your story like that. Like, what is that overarching story that's going to keep people coming back for more? In Avengers, it was like Thanos is coming. Like, we've got to get ready. So what is that story for you? And for me, like right now, again, to be transparent, it's like, hey, like I did the thing. I struggled for a long time. A long, long time. I built a business, it failed. I built another business, it failed. I just built this business and it took off, and I learned a lot and we grew quickly. And then a pandemic is on the verge of taking us out. Now we're going to close the doors. So what do I want to do next? That's where I'm at in my album. That's where I'm at in that story, and that's what I'm communicating. That's what I will be communicating throughout all of my content. So those are some things that I would start to think about. And like as you move forward in your careers and in your life, and as the world progresses and becomes more competitive, and when machines can do what we can do like that, significantly better than we can do it, like start to treat yourself like you're a business. Start thinking of yourself as you are a business, because you are a business, and just like a business, like, yeah, like your product has to be good. Yeah, you have to be able to do whatever you're applying for or whatever you're saying you can do, but it's also perception. It's also like, does this business look attractive? Like, does this business have a good network? It's also about who like start treating yourself as a business and you're going to be significantly more successful in your careers. And just in life in general, especially once we start getting into the future and things start to change and more technology becomes mainstream. But I'm totally down to riff on just personal branding specifically. I know there's some questions on what does that mean? What does the content look like? I would love to riff on that. Luke, if you want to help me out, there's a lot of questions in there. At least I think there's a lot of questions in there.
There's a ton. There's a lot going on. And thank you so much, everyone, for all of the questions coming through. These are fantastic. So one question that I saw early on, which I think is really helpful for someone who's maybe early in career that doesn't know a whole lot about personal brand. Can you define personal brand and talk a little bit about what you mean by that? When you talk about someone who's looking for their next play, like what does that personal brand mean?
Yeah, I think for me personally, again, I'm a little weird. My ideology is a little different than a lot of people, but for me, like it's who you are. Like you look at social media, you look at technology, but social media specifically, like it's just an extension of who we are, and like that's it. So when you look at like how do I go about building a personal brand, that doesn't necessarily mean like you've got to go post 20 YouTube videos today or 100 pieces of content every single day. Like I know some people say, like it doesn't necessarily mean that, but it's who are you online, who are you offline, and how do those connect? Are they aligned? Like for me, that's what that is. So how do you go about building that? That's a lot of things. I think that a part of it is network. Like, hey, like who do I know? Who knows me? Do they know what I do? But I think when you really start looking at like, well, people like, will they want to hire me for this? Or will they want to bring me in to speak for this? If you look at like, I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got, especially when I was young, I was reading a blog. I don't remember who it was by, but it was, don't try to be the best at marketing or at video games or this broad one thing, like what's the cluster? What's the intersection of the top 3 to 5 things that you're interested in, top 3 to 5 skills that you have? So for me, like that's human behavior, that's strategy, that's business, that's experiences in video games, and probably something else that I'm blanking on right now, but I'm not the best at each of those things individually, but the intersection of those things, I will crush it. So I would start looking at that. So maybe make a list of those 3 to 5 things, especially like when you're young, those 3 to 5 things that you're either interested in or you have a skill set around, and then start like exploring that intersection. Like What does that look like? But personal brand to me is really just an extension of who you are. Another way of saying reputation.
This is awesome, Q. Thank you so much. And I have one question here that is really good, and I've thought about this many times in my own career. If I was doing it again, you know, how would I start? And I'll go a step further. If let's say everything you had ever done in your career after college was wiped out, and you were starting with a clean slate like right now, what would be the first couple of things that you would do to get started, even though that it was scary, even though it was daunting? What would you do?
Yeah. Am I the same age I am now, or am I back in the day?
We could do whatever you do.
I think very dangerous advice, and it's going to sound really weird considering everything I just said, is go build your personal brand. I think that's kind of dangerous, because I think before you go and build your personal brand, you have to have clarity around who you are. And I think a lot of, especially young people, a lot of what you see is, hey, like I'm going to go imitate Gary Vaynerchuk, or I'm going to imitate Q, or I'm going to imitate like Tom Bilyeu or Oprah or Marie Foley or whatever. Like I'm going to go imitate these people. And I think you have to have clarity around who you are. What that looks like, I can't tell you. If I could, like the world would be a much, much brighter and better place. But maybe that starts with like, hey, like 3 to 5 things that I'm good at, or like filling out a thing like, this is what I want my life to look like in 5 years. I think for me specifically, I would start with finding clarity around myself, at least enough clarity. Like, who am I? Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? What do I want my life to look like? Why should people follow me, and treat myself like a business? I think after that, and something that I'm really interested in now is, because I'm a writer, is like writing, in newsletters. And if you look at back in the day, like when the internet was first getting started, like when blogs were taking off, like that was how people consumed information. And it was about making the world a better place. It was about talking about something that you're interested in, not talking about yourself. So that's why I'm obsessed with like newsletters right now. And there's one that has 5,000 subscribers. And to put it into context, mine has 25,000 subscribers, and I haven't made a cent on it. I don't really want to right now. But this one has 5,000 subscribers. It's a newsletter, and it makes $2 million a year, and it's ran by 2 people. Insane, like insane. I think I would focus on something like that, because of course, like I would do all the other short forms of content, but I would put all of my eggs in that basket, or something long form like a podcast or a long form YouTube channel. And then I would take snippets of that and put it everywhere else, have that micro content everywhere else. But I would focus on that and not worry about the numbers, not worry about people liking my stuff or commenting, but I would give everything to the people that were commenting and just start building it like that. And I think outside of that as well, I would really focus on building a solid community. If I could, I would say I would want to own it. So a text group or an email list, something like that, but even like a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group or Telegram or LinkedIn, but a solid community centered around something, which is what I did when I first started as well. I had a Facebook group called House of Starters that later became House of Misfits, that later became Straight to Purpose. But it's a group of people that want to master the craft, and we support each other and we help each other, and that's it. Like that's been the best decision I've made business wise. But I would probably start there with newsletter, clarity, and then really focus on the community aspect.
This is fantastic advice, and really good for someone who's kind of getting in at the ground level at the moment. Alonzo had a great comment. He said that there are some folks that maybe are a little bit more shy, or they don't like being in the public eye. Personal brand still matters to them. Reputation still matters to them, right? Regardless. Tell us a little bit about how they should be thinking about, if they don't want to post every day, if they don't want to be out there, like how does someone like that increase the value of their personal brand?
Yeah. I think it's also a misconception that the people you see on stages or you see posting all the time are just extreme extroverts. I am an extrovert, but I'm probably the most introverted extrovert you will ever meet in your life. Like I'm just now getting to the point where I miss people, and we've been like 3 months quarantined or 4 months quarantined. I don't even know how long it's been, like just I'm just now getting to the point, like I'm good. I could do this a long, long time, That being said though, like if you don't want to do it, ask yourself why you don't want to do it. I wouldn't think of it like, hey, I got to build this brand so I can be successful. Like, because again, it's like a reputation, like if you're a really good writer, but you don't want to talk to people as much, like, right. like you don't need to, like, it would definitely help you, but you don't need to. Just think of it as an extension of who you are. And just ask yourself why. And maybe the answer is like, wow, I don't really care for that thing, honestly. But don't treat it like, hey, I've got to do this thing so that I'm going to be successful. Like, it should be enjoyable. It should be fun because it's you and you're doing and leaning into whatever it is that you like. And there are a lot of introverts and a lot of people that create a system so that they don't have to focus on those things. I hate editing. I hate shooting content. I used to do it a lot, but I outsource it now. I don't want to. I don't want to touch it. You can do that same thing on the sales end, on the ops end, on whatever end it is that you don't like doing. But think of it as an extension, and just know that there are a lot of people that aren't aren't extroverted as well that are doing it.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible advice, and I think that comment that you made to lean in to whatever you're doing is at the core of it. If you are passionate about something, you want to do something, um, lean into it. It doesn't matter how that looks. Take the opportunity to do something about what you're passionate about. I love that. Want to switch gears a little bit, and you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you're going through, and it was interesting hearing that story about your friend that asked you, are you spiritual? Talk a little bit about at your lowest points, which it sounds like there have been over the last couple of years. Like, what's motivated you? What's kept you going? What hasn't kept you going? But talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. There's been a lot of points, I think when I was first getting started, I had totaled my car. I hurt my back. My girlfriend at the time had left me, and I had to build a business. I had to pay rent, like, very hard. Um, then later on, like, I finally closed the deal, and then they walk out. They disappear. I learned a lot in that time. Um, then, like, I remember a client paying their invoice on time for the first time, and I was like, oh my, yes. So I went out, I bought groceries, my fridge was full for the first time, and then my power was off because I hadn't paid utilities, like, so everything spoiled and I couldn't eat. Um, and having to deal with that, like, as you're saying, the social media growth, but your bank account is not correlated with it, was a very hard time for me. And then, like, you finally start finding success financially as well. But you're like, this isn't what I want to do. So let's do something else. And taking a big risk. And I was homeless, and I slept on my office floor for a while, Airbnbs and hotels if I was lucky, but mostly just office floor and friends' floors, very, very rough time. And then there were, of course, rough times throughout all of that. And like now, I would say the main thing that kept me going though is like how miserable I was when I first started, like, and how miserable I was when I was in that other job. Like, if I was going to be miserable, at least do something that I love, like, and again, going back to what my promise that I made with other founders, we're going to be good. We're going to be so much better off if we focus on us and focus on building a business and having a thing that allows us to grow. We'll be so much better off. And I knew that. And I am, like, if you told me like, hey, Q, come speak at this thing when I was 22, I would have laughed in your face multiple times. Like, I wouldn't have stopped, like, because I wasn't that person. But I've been able to grow. Now I'm planning an accelerator when I didn't even know what the word entrepreneurship meant when I was 21, like, there's a lot of growth in that. But it was really like that pain that I had initially. I didn't want to go back to it. And then where do I want to be in the future is what kept me going.
This is awesome. And thank you so much, Q, for taking the time to speak to everyone. I want to give you a couple seconds here to say a couple last words of inspiration to people. Before you do, I want to remind everyone that there are a couple sessions after this. We've got Literal, we've got Cambridge Financial, we've got Fidelity Investments, Blip, all hiring, and in multiple different states across the country, hiring tons of positions. And so tune into those sessions. They're going to be here on the YouTube channel live, and engage there. We want to thank you all for coming. But Q, what would be your final words of advice for those folks that are grinding through the pandemic right now, listening to you speak?
Yeah, a couple things. there's going to be a session later on. My good friend Brittany Crystal, she's a beast, and it's on personal branding. And I know they'll get tactical, which is why I didn't really want to get tactical. Definitely tune into that because it will be very, very helpful. And lastly, like I'm not big into motivational. I would say like, especially if you're looking for a job or you're looking for clients or whatever it is, or looking to meet people, utilize LinkedIn, like the advanced search there. You can find anyone, and you can figure out how they're connected to you, like their content, engage with their stuff, and don't be afraid to reach out, and go directly to the person that's doing the hiring or has control of the budget or whatever it is you're looking at for. But focus on your brands, focus on you, get that clarity, and leverage the tools that are out there for you. And if you need anything, like shoot me a message. I'm always down to jam, any platform. But I appreciate you all, and thank you for not making this digital experience super weird.
You bet. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for the amazing advice. I know it's helped a ton of people today, and looking forward to keeping the conversation going here. Join us on chat if you haven't yet on Slack, and looking forward to keeping the relationship going.
Awesome, my man. I appreciate you. Peace.
See you later.